we remember our servicemen and women who died in battle, we're also taking this time to address another cause of death, suicide and post-traumatic stress. The VA study finds that 20 veterans take their own lives each and every day. To shed light on this dark reality is Clinical Director with New Start Recovery Solutions in Concord, David Burke. Thanks for talking with us.
Good evening.
So as we commemorate this day, would you please let us know how widespread of an issue this is for our living veterans who come home from deployment?
So most of the veterans that come home from deployment, it's an estimated that 27%, I mean, usually one out of four will be suffering with some kind of underlying issue as far as substance abuse, post-traumatic stress, anxiety disorder, or some kind of an emotional numbness due to the fact of suffering some kind of trauma.
And so what are some of those signs? You mentioned substance abuse.
So some of the signs and the warning signs is we see when they come back after about 90 days, that's kind of the onset of the post-traumatic stress, or maybe some of the anxiety issues of getting settled in and kind of debriefing from an active situation. And so we'll see high rates of anxiety, a lot of avoidance. So that's where the emotional numbness comes in. A lot of our veterans are suffering in silence. So as far as the transition back from war or any kind of deployment, we see some of the triggers would be maybe, I'd say some of the urges would be trying to feel comfortable in a situation where they have more crowds and more of an onset of social anxiety. And then some of the feelings and emotions and the actions that they start displaying, we see them come in and they have a hard time adjusting to civilian life, which is, there's a lot of depression that we're seeing. So at New Start Recovery Solutions, we treat the underlying issues as well as the substance abuse, and it's treated with dual diagnosed treatment. So we use a lot of different approaches of evidence-based treatment around DBT or EMDR, and a lot of emotional enhancement with some reframing tools. So a lot of the triggers and stuff, we'll see loss of sleep, nightmares. A lot of veterans that are suffering in silence, they really have a hard time with their spouses and family and acceptance. So we see a lot of this, some of the suicide rates kind of go down with early intervention, and a lot of meeting them where they're at, getting them where they need to go, and running an integrated treatment plan along with our U.S. Veterans Association. So now that we're New Start Recovery Solutions as a provider, we get to run the integrated treatment plan. That means work with, as well as if they're suffering with homelessness, or if they're suffering with mental health, or they're just suffering with some kind of underlying issue as far as a medical problem. So we treat the whole problem along with the family dynamics.
And so you mentioned that early prevention and intervention is key. So how early on and at what sort of a sign or a first sign should veterans themselves realize that they need to come forward and ask for help? I understand that there's a stigma around mental health in general among our population, so let alone these veterans who are coming home feeling like they should remain strong, as that was, of course, part of their image and their jobs.
Yeah, so one of the things, I mean, I do a lot of intervention and crisis intervention for veterans and a lot of first responders and stuff. So, I try to break the stigma of talking about quality of life and what it looks like for them coming back. So, we can start right away, as far as, like if it's a family intervention, talk with the family along with the individual, or, one of the soldiers that are coming back, or I even work with them when they're active. And so when they're coming back, I would say, some of the underlying issues would be, early intervention is going to be like an insurance policy with no deductible, because what you're going to be doing is educating them with some reframing tools. And that's like 3 different ways of picking something out. They can pick out the best way. They have 2 other options. They're working on it themselves. So it's building their self-esteem and drive, and it gives them some motivational enhancement to do something on their own instead of suffering in that silence that we talk about, or maybe getting confrontation because they get agitated sometimes with coming back, and it's hard social anxiety to set into. So the offset would be early intervention, education, and resources, and some positive distractions with motivational enhancement. And whether that's with life skills, rebuilding, because just treating the underlying issues isn't treating the whole problem. It's just what are they going to do for the rest of their lives? If it's getting back into school, if it's working with a family dynamic counselor to bring the family back together. So sometimes, like we work with a Caltrans contract where we help our veterans get back and we resume build, and they work for us for 6 months. They have the option to go on to, go full time. So I think it's meeting them where they're at right when they get back, actually. So we see them as quick as 6 months after deployment when they get back.
And so I imagine that this is an extremely sensitive topic for loved ones to come forward with their concerns and let their veteran know, hey, I think that we need to get some, clinical expert here to discuss whatever issues might be going through your mind. But then the defense comes up. So what are some tips that you could give to people in making that really difficult approach?
So what I like to recommend is, it's a loving approach. It's an invitational model. So it's instead of a confrontational. So that internal leverage you have inside your body, you're not exercising that external. It's saying you got to do this. You say, I love you. I think, we can get through this. This is what it looks like, and this is where our family is at with it. And we're going to get through it together. We're probably not going to figure it out today, but we've seeked out some professional help along with the Veterans Association. So we have a whole team of people working for us. And all we have to do is trust the process. And that's where we come in with the Veterans Association as well. And what we do is we just meet them where they're at, meet the family where they're at. And then, while the participant is in treatment with us, we have a family dynamic workshop, and we'll facilitate that. So we're not only talking to the individual that's going through treatment, but we're also educating the family about what it looks like, that quality of life, that stigma of mental health and substance abuse. And so when they get out of treatment, they're talking the same language and they can support each other a little easier. And then, so it's a family program, but identifying the patient, while he's in treatment. So the continuum of care program, when they step out and they leave, that portable structure that we're trying to develop when he gets out for the quality of life, that way everybody's on the same page. And so we have the aftercare of the alumni, and we also go into the Veterans Association and help them out and talk to them about what we can do, what we can't do, and how we fit into the system of being a provider for them. So we're very proud to be talking about this on Memorial Day today because, this morning I was talking to some veterans, and it's an honor just to be that first frontline guy who gets the calls and walks them through, we're in Star Recovery to develop this whole program around trauma and underlying issues.
What could you tell us in particular about the younger veterans who are coming back home from serving in the Middle East? What are you seeing? Is there a trend, and what exactly they had to see and witness, and then are bringing those memories back with them?
Well, what I'm seeing with the younger generation is there's more of a percentage of them, like they're suffering in silence because there's so much, guilt, because they're survive. It could be survivor's guilt. It could be, a little bit of shame about not being back in war, or, some of the transition back from war and deployment would be the nightmares. I would say with the suffer in silence and the apprehension and social anxieties, and let's say they go into a big crowd and stuff like that, the unpredictable, so we like to do some mindfulness, meditation, and relapse prevention. It's kind of moving them through the urges, the desires, the feelings and emotions, and the actions. And what we treat is the reaction to all that. And so that's where we do a thing with the biopsychosocial, where it covers everything on the mental health as well as the substance abuse, but also talks about what it looks like to be back in the States and how we're going to navigate through that.
And much of life is how you react to a situation, and really it's in your hands, and but it's having the tools that help you get through that, right?
Correct. So that we call that moving through some stages of change with them. and not every one participant is the same. So all those stages of change could be anywhere from so maybe he would he could smell something, or he could feel something, or he had something going around to where you know say Memorial Day could be a trigger, because he felt like there's a lot of honor being a soldier, and so when you're coming back, but it's also a self-identity. It's your identity sometimes too if you've been 20 years in the service. So how do we reinvent ourselves? And that's moving through stages of change and talking about and reflecting and coming up with those reframing tools so they can build that self-esteem up and feel. And then there's a lot of strength in numbers. So when we work with a lot of veterans, they support each other too. It's a beautiful thing.
That's a very good point. And it's not just the emotional pain that they're bringing back. According to military.com, more than half of the veterans who participated in conflicts in the Middle East actually reported that they experienced chronic pain too. And you mentioned that could possibly lead to substance abuse to cope.
Yeah, that neuroadaptation, that's called tolerance. So what it does is, they build up over time, and so some of the dependence and some of the underlying issues that go along with it, it hits the prefrontal lobes, which is your pleasure system. So some of the things that get compromised is your serotonins and dopamines, and so once they get kind of depleted with the depression, that's why we're a medical-based model, and so what we do is titrate them, we detox them, and we move them through those stages of change. And we have the whole continuum of care. So we go from the detox protocol, which is a medical detox, and then we have our dual diagnosis track, the residential treatment. So we can actually work with them and prescribe or anything, so we do work along with the Veterans Association and their medical team as well. So some of the things that we can do along with that, we can serve and treat our veterans a little bit better than we were 10 years ago. And it's pretty impressive how we do it now, because, they could be at the Veterans Association asking for help, and 2 hours later, we're picking them up. And, everything we're talking about right now is going to go through those stages. We're doing the biopsychosocials. We're working with the medical clinic. The psychiatrist is on staff. They transfer all this stuff to us. So when they feel like they're getting their feelings and emotions and they're being heard, that's when it starts changing for them, because they feel validated.
That's incredible, and thank you for the work that you all do. There's also the stress of when coming back, are they going to be able to find a regular job in civilian life? And if they don't in time, of course, then you have the question of financial hardship. Are these sorts of treatments out of pocket, or does the government end up covering those costs for example, services like what you offer?
So at New Start Recovery Solutions over in Concord, and we have the one up in Chico as well. And so there's no charge to the veterans coming into our program. So as far as it goes, they just get down to, we're with the VA community care. So, we're proud to be serving our veterans. But at the same time, we're going to be working with the U.S. Veterans Association in community care, to where when they go in there, they get an assessment. I'm talking to the case manager and the lead counselor and the psychiatrist. So that individual, Caltrans, a lot of the unions, because I treat first responders, and we're a behavioral health system as well. So we're pretty connected as far as, especially in the Bay Area and throughout the country, is we can service our veterans, not only just mind, body, and spirit and substance abuse and mental health, but we also work with their life skills. So we get to run that along with like some of the unions and stuff, and apprenticeship programs. We have over 100 people employed with us, and I can tell you over 25% of them are veterans as well. So we're employing veterans. All other agencies we work with are. So, it seems to be something that I see after like some of the fires we had in Northern California. FEMA came in, so we had a lot of job training there. So a lot of them got endorsed and went on to work as a firefighter, fire cleanup, or with the Caltrans.
Well, thank you so much to David Burke. He's the clinical director with New Start Recovery Solutions in Concord, for talking to us and in all that really crucial work that you do in giving our veterans a fighting chance. You're watching Chron on the Bay Area, streaming news 24/7.